Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I am your host, Midge Noble, and we're back again this week to talk about all things that just pop into our head. So today I was looking through a book that I just love. It's called Irreverent Prayers, Talking to God When You're Seriously Sick. It's also just a really cool book to kind of adapt some of these prayers to other things that we're dealing with, in my opinion. And it was written by Elizabeth Felicetti and Samantha Vincent Alexander. I'll put the link for this in the show notes for today at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. And today we're talking about waiting patiently or not. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to read this prayer. It said, when waiting on tests and results. So it doesn't have to be tests. It could be whatever we're waiting for. God, in the Bible, you speak of the time that the Israelites were wandering in the desert with great longing. That was pre-incarnation. So maybe you don't get how it felt for them. I can assure you that it was awful. We humans hate uncertainty. I'm having to wait weeks to figure out what is wrong with me and cannot fathom 40 years of such nonsense. God, send me some clarity, please. Amen. So I am not a patient person. And I think part of my impatience comes from my absolute physical, emotional, and survival instinct to have information and have it now. People of trauma really need to always know what's going on because in their homes, in how they were treated, maybe how they were lied to or deceived, waiting for someone to tell them something is highly anxiety provoking. It's, for me anyway, it's just excruciating not to have the answer and not to have things tied up in a bow. When I was going back to church and trying to assimilate myself back into a structured religious experience, I asked a bazillion questions of Father Joe. And although he was very patient with me, I'm sure it wore on him at some point. And I just needed to have all these answers. I wanted to have everything that I was upset about regarding the church, regarding God, regarding the LGBTQIA community and how we were seen in the church. I wanted all of the answers. I needed it to be tied up in a nice little bow. And I needed to have the answers before I said, yes, I'm going to come back. The funny thing is that God doesn't necessarily need us to have all the answers and probably doesn't want us to have all the answers. Or he would have just said, he, she, they would have just said, this is where I came from, this is how it all happened, and now please believe in me. Well, we all know that never happened. And when we're waiting on test results or we're waiting on, Trump not to be in office, or if we're waiting on, someone to give us what we need in order to help our families, or we're waiting on insurance payments, or whatever is on your plate these days as to what's bringing you the most desire to know. I think sometimes in the waiting and in the patience or lack of patience is where we grow the most. There are times that even though I haven't had the answer, I grew so much more when the answer finally came and I looked back and saw how God was guiding me on a path that I wouldn't have even taken had I probably known what I was going to go through. But when I looked back, it was like, oh, That makes so much sense now. It makes sense that I went through that trauma, or it made sense that I was experiencing this because I learned so much. So I do believe that patience is a way for us to exercise our faith, being able to be in uncomfortable situations and relying on the unseen and being patient through that trial is a way that we grow our faith. I was reading the introduction to a book called Black is FU, and it really does say FU, but we all know what that means. And I'll talk more about that later at some point, I think. But in the introduction, it talked about this child who had overheard his grandma and mom talking about that if Reagan got into office, they would be put back in the cotton fields. Well, this resonated with this young child, and he perseverated on it and was fearful of that. And when Reagan was actually elected, this child just went off the charts trying to plan their escape and how to get out of it and all of these things that he would lose if he was not able to stay in the United States, and they just had to get out. Well, boy, this book was written back in 2023, and yet how relevant it is today that people have already bugged out of America to go to foreign countries because of Trump. And how weird is it that we are still trying to figure out how to overcome and get through this regime that we're in. So the patience that this child did not really have, it went straight to panic, which is my preferred coping skill, apparently. Patience versus panic. Maybe we should do that. But it's the same thing. It's, do you have the faith to be going up against something that seems so unsurmountable? And yet, when we look back, the people that maybe would have said they would have gone into the cotton fields again did not have to. However, we all know that our Black brothers and sisters have never been treated equally or well or the way they deserve to be treated. Not even today in 2025, way not back in the Crow era. I mean, never. Absolutely never. From the point where they were extracted from their homeland and brought to America, it's all been a sham for them. Nothing has ever been right or equitable or justice for them. So when we're in these situations, real life, horrible situations where family members are being kidnapped and disappeared, people and children are being taken into these deplorable situations without all of the resources they deserve and need to survive this. How do we say, oh, just be patient? Well, it's not that easy. And it's not really a thing to say just be patient. I think the patience is really hold on to your inner soul's faith. Our soul has got to stay intact. Our soul has got to be strong enough to know that we have never been forsaken, that we have always been cherished by God, and that we will come out the other end. Does that mean that all of us will survive physically? Probably not. I do believe there's going to be great loss of life, either through suicide or through bad health care or through botched abortions or from just being attacked. I do believe there's going to be great loss of life during this regime until we get out of it. What I'm saying, though, is even those people who lose their life, they are still a child of God, and their life will not be ended forever. I don't want to go through it. I don't want any loss of life. I don't want any of my friends, family, or anyone who's breathing to have to go through the trauma that we may experience. And I don't know what we're going to experience. And that's part of my anxiety, is that I'm trying to be faithful and patient and see how this all works out, because it really could. We could get to the brink of disaster and something explode open and say, oh, now it's over. And yet, we're going to have to rebuild this country. We're going to have to rebuild our faith that got notched up. We're going to have to rebuild relationships that we have destroyed because of our fear of each other. It's not going to be an easy fix, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to always end well for all of us. However, no matter what, if we hold on to our soul, if the inner mechanism that we have inside to have just a wee bit of faith, I mean, just a drop, just a teeny tiny drop of believing that there is always an end to bad things. If we just hold on to that, there's always an end to bad things. And we will take one step at a time to say, in this moment, I'm still here. In this moment, I'm still queer. In this moment, I still have my family. I still have my home. I still have my fur babies. I still have the sun that came up this morning and the light breeze that might have blown through your neighborhood. If so, give me your address and I want to come. We just hold on to that one nugget, just that one thing, every single moment of the day. Find just that one nugget. It doesn't have to be big and colossal. It doesn't mean that all of our answers have been explored and given to us. That's never going to happen. But just like in that prayer, thinking that God may not understand, and we don't want to go through the nonsense, but understanding that waiting has always been a thing. Waiting to get out of the tyranny of the Romans, waiting to get through the exodus of the migration, leaving what was bad, but getting into a really bad mess before they got to the promised land. Moses getting to the hill right to see the promised land, but not being able to go in. Waiting. Maybe not always patiently, but waiting. And pairing that waiting with faith. The faith of the God of our understanding that has always brought us through the trials. And looking back to see how being impatient and serving idols instead of the God of your understanding, not helpful. And yet God is still patient with us, bringing us back, coming back again to get us and bring us forward, and going back again to get us and bring us forward. Waiting with the belief of that one little nugget that eventually, at some point, the worst of the worst has to end, and better is on the other side of that impatience and that waiting. Better is on the other side of all the pain and the frustration. Better is on the other side of loss and grief and despair. Better always comes in some form or fashion. So hold on to that nugget. Hold on to the one thing that you can look around in your experience right now. If you just did a 360 of looking around you, what in your world is worth waiting for? Is it that child that you want to see grow up? Is it that job that you really will love and know that you can make a difference is? Is it the job that you already have that you know you're fulfilling a purpose? Is it the smile that that person gave you in the parking lot where you took their cart back for them so they wouldn't have to walk all the way back to the store or to the cart collection box? Is it that one thing like a gentle breeze, or that the sun finally broke through the rain, or something came in the mail that you'd been waiting for and you finally got the answer? Maybe an answer to a test result comes by phone. Maybe somebody calls you up and just says, just thinking about you, really, really thinking about you and hoping you're having a good day. Better is coming. So let's not give up or give in. We may not always be patient, but be patient with your better. Let the better keep coming up in your head. And when you feel despair, turn around and think of better. So as I close today, I'm going to offer one more prayer adapted from this book, Irreverent Prayers. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "So, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour?" Jesus, your disciples could not wait with you for 1 hour. Some say waiting is the worst, but even worse than waiting has been bad news after weeks of waiting, wandering, and wondering. I want to offer a prayer of thanksgiving that my wait is over, but I'm furious and scared and sad. So instead, please, just sit with me. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Thank you for subscribing and sharing and always being the great, great listeners and subscribers that I have ever known. So thank you. So remember that we can be a tribe, we can be a group together. If you join the Gay with God Facebook page, you'll be able to join a group of us that meet once a month for a little Zoom group we call My Faith Journey, where we talk about these struggles in these confusing times, and we vent, and sometimes we learn from each other, and sometimes we laugh with each other, and sometimes we're just off the charts. So if you want to join that group, just get on the Gay with God Facebook group on Facebook and answer all the questions, and I will invite you inside. Remember that you can still get a confidential complimentary session with me. Go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. If you're struggling with just being resilient, if you're struggling with coming out or your faith journey, I'm available to you, and this complimentary session will help us to get to know each other a little bit better and see how I might be able to assist you further, and that is at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. If you would like a copy of my memoir, you can go to any bookstore that you like to get your books, or if you want a signed copy, you can go to gaywithgod.com, my webpage, gaywithgod.com, and you can order it there, and I will give you a signed copy. If you are listening to this podcast and questioning whether you can be gay and be in relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.